Hello and welcome to my channel. If you or a loved one have been injured by one of the COVID jabs, stick around. I'll tell you about the unbelievable payouts from the government program tasked with compensating for COVID countermeasure injuries. Spoiler alert, it isn't good. If you've heard that vaccine manufacturers are exempt from liability from vaccine injuries, you are correct. But what's the trade-off? Here's some history. Back in the 1980s, some people were awarded large jury awards for damages some claimed were caused by DPT vaccines. As a result, vaccine producers began to cease the production of the vaccines, leading public health officials to worry about a loss of herd immunity. So in 1986, the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act was passed, and in 1988, the Department of Health and Human Services established the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, or VACP for short. This program was for those injured by covered vaccines and paid claims through what is referred to as the vaccine court. It has been reported that close to $5 billion has been paid out since the VACP was created. Also, around the same time, vaccine manufacturers were given immunity from liability for vaccine injuries. According to federal law 42 U.S. Code 300 AA-22, quote, no vaccine manufacturer shall be liable in a civil action for damages arising from a vaccine-related injury or death associated with the administration of a vaccine after October 1, 1988. If the injury or death resulted from the side effects that were unavoidable, even though the vaccine was properly prepared and was accompanied by proper directions and warning. So the trade-off was that vaccine manufacturers became immune to liability. Still, anyone injured would file a claim with the VACP for their losses. Then when COVID-19 came along and new vaccines and treatments were authorized, COVID-related vaccine and treatment injuries were outside the covered vaccines for VACP. So are people with legitimate vaccine injuries from COVID just on their own? We'll get to that later, but instead of being in the VACP, damages were to be covered under the Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program, the CICP. Take a look at this video.
CICP is the Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program, and what we do is we provide benefits for folks who were injured through the receipt of a countermeasure that the Secretary had asked the population to receive.
We are a federal government program available to help the public in the event that they incur out-of-pocket medical expenses or lost wages as the result of an injury from a covered countermeasure. The purpose of the CICP is to help people who have been injured by vaccines, drugs, or diagnostic tools that may have been used in an event of an emergency situation.
The program provides compensation or benefits to individuals who are seriously injured from a covered countermeasure.
Examples of covered countermeasures would be the 2009 H1N1 flu vaccination, antivirals, and anthrax vaccinations, smallpox vaccinations.
In order to file a claim with the CICP, we ask that you submit a request for benefits package. A request for benefits package comprises 2 sets of forms as well as instructions to help you complete it.
There's a authorization form, which is essentially a consent for your providers to release information to us. And we use that information to reconstruct what happened.
The program has a 1-year filing deadline, and it's 1 year from when the covered countermeasure was administered or used.
The time that it takes to complete a review process really depends on the amount of medical records that you have and the complexity of your case.
We encourage anyone who believes they have been injured by a covered countermeasure to fill out a request for benefits package and submit it.
That video was from several years ago, but as I said, COVID vaccine injuries are covered under the CICP. Let's look at some information from this Congress. 's Congressional Research Service report, which I'll link below. 'Congressional 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 Research Service report, compensation programs for potential COVID-19 vaccine injuries. So what is covered? The CIPC doesn't just cover vaccine injuries, but injuries from other measures from COVID, as you can see here. That could include respirators, ventilators, other drugs. So until the current PrEP Act declaration and public health emergency end, this program is your remedy of last resort. I want to show a quick comparison from this report between the CICP and the VICP. Notice the CICP is for COVID is in the middle, and the older VICP for the traditional vaccines is on the right. Okay, so the scope of coverage. So for the VICP, traditional vaccines, routine immunizations for children and pregnant women are covered. However, with CICP, it covers children or adults and things in addition to the vaccine injuries. The VICP covers death as well as illness, injury, and other conditions that last more than 6 months and require inpatient hospitalizations or surgery. CICP covers death or serious physical injury that warrants hospitalization or leads to significant loss of function. So how do you go about obtaining compensation? For the VICP, it's a judicial process, which is handled through what's referred to as the vaccine court. The CICP is an application you do online, and it is an administrative process. What are the available benefits? As you see here, the VICP covers non-reimbursed expenses, lost income, pain and suffering, emotional distress, death benefits, and attorney's fees. However, the CICP only covers what they consider reasonable medical expenses, lost income, and death benefit. The VICP does not allow punitive damages, neither does the CICP, but the CICP also does not cover attorney's fees or payment for pain and suffering. So what's the possible payout? With the VICP, it pays $250,000 for death benefit and $250,000 for pain and suffering and emotional distress. CICP's standard death benefit is higher at $370,000 as of fiscal year 2021. We'll see about that later. And a max loss income of $50,000 a year with a lifetime cap of about 7.5 years. You can see here the time requirement for the two. VICP is anywhere from 2 to 4 years, depending on what type of injury. For CICP, it is 1 year, which makes it somewhat difficult for some people. I noticed it said within 1 year of a new countermeasure injury table. And when I looked that up, it appears the last countermeasure injury table was in 2015. Okay, so let's get down to the nitty-gritty. As of November 1st, which was 6 weeks ago, 10,646 countermeasure claims have been filed with CICP. Of that, 7,582 allege injuries or death from the COVID vaccine. If you follow the data from the VAERS Adverse Event Reporting System, the VAERS database, you know that there are over 32,000 deaths that have been reported and almost 300,000 hospitalizations, almost 1.5 million vaccine adverse events in total. Now, these are only reported incidents. We've talked about that in previous videos. And just being reported does not prove causality. Okay, so let's cut to the chase now. What is the average payout? As of November 1st, 2022, one claim has been partially compensated for anaphylaxis. 9 others have been determined to be eligible. 8 were for myocarditis. 1 apparently was for a death. I have no reason to believe that the administrators of the CICP are doing anything underhanded or illegal. I have to think they're following the rules based on the federal law and administrative mandate. But why is it so difficult that statistically few are applying. The statute of limitations could be one. Knowledge of the program could be another. It also appears if a particular adverse event has not been proven to cause that specific effect, then no way. The medical records have to show that the vaccine or countermeasure caused the event. So if a type of adverse event is so rare that they consider it unlikely, and since the studies are usually funded by drug companies, is a large enough study to prove otherwise ever going to be done? Are these standards reasonable? Can we discount the fact that Pfizer alone, and I'm not including any of the other vax producer, is slated to make an estimated $100 billion profit from the COVID drugs and vaccines in 2022 alone? And if you've been injured by the COVID jab or other countermeasures, and I pray you haven't, I encourage you to look into filing a claim, contacting your congressman. I have no idea if it will do any good, but it is what it is at this point. As always, thank you for watching. Please click like. I always appreciate the comments. Thank you, and God bless.